What if time travel wasn't just a figment of science fiction? What if we could journey back to the era of Henry VII, the first Tudor king? Imagine a world where the ticking hands of a clock are not masters, but mere suggestions. A world where the past, present, and future blend into a singular experience, where time is merely a concept to play with. The idea of time travel has fascinated scientists, philosophers, and dreamers alike. Hello and welcome to Psych Insight, where we explore the world and history through the lens of psychology. If you find our content intriguing, please subscribe, like, and share. Now, let's indulge ourselves in this hypothetical game and imagine we could journey back to the late 15th century, to the time of Henry Tudor, or as he was later known as King Henry VII, the first monarch of the Tudor dynasty, a man whose reign marked a new chapter in English history. His ascension to the throne ended the Wars of the Roses and initiated a period of relative peace and prosperity. Henry VII was not just a king, but a man of intrigue and complexity. From refugee to king, the Battle of Bosworth. On the eve of the Battle of Bosworth, tension hung thick in the air. Henry Tudor's forces, though vastly outnumbered, camped mere miles from King Richard III's larger host, poised on the ridge's edge, ready for war. As dawn broke on August 22nd, 1485, Henry advanced, closing the gap towards Richard's formidable army. The scene was a chessboard of war, with William Stanley and his troops perched like an eagle, their eyes fixed on the unfolding drama, waiting to descend. Stanley was a man of strategy, not yet revealing his hand, gauging the tide of battle to decide his allegiance. The armies clashed with thunderous fury, metal on metal, cries of warriors filling the air. In the midst of the chaos, Richard III, seizing the moment of distraction within Henry's ranks, led a fierce charge. The battle teetered on the brink of carnage, with Henry's standard-bearers valiantly cut down. At this critical juncture, Stanley made his pivotal choice, his men roaring, "For King Henry," as they plunged into the fray. The battlefield echoed with the clash of destiny. Richard, emboldened yet isolated, charged into the melee, reportedly shouting, "I will die king or win." In a whirlwind of steel and valour, Richard, the King of England, met his end, his crown slipping from his grasp. After the dust settled, Henry's men scoured the field, claiming the spoils of war, while Lord Stanley solemnly placed the crown upon Henry's head amidst triumphant cries. Against all conceivable odds, Henry Tudor, once a refugee and fugitive, now wore the crown of England as now Henry VII. Though the Battle of Bosworth concluded, it heralded the dawn of a relentless struggle. Establishing a dynasty would be Henry's lifelong crusade, navigating the turbulent waters of monarchy and legacy, the effects and lessons he learned from trauma and victory. The Battle of Bosworth was not just a military victory for Henry VII, it was a profound learning experience that shaped his reign and personal outlook. Witnessing the demise of Richard III, who was unceremoniously dragged away from the battlefield, served as a stark reminder to Henry of the fragility and precariousness of royal power. This moment had a lasting impact on him, reinforcing the notion that his own kingdom could be as vulnerable as Richard's had been. The trauma of the battle, coupled with the euphoria of his unexpected victory, taught Henry several crucial lessons. First, it underscored the importance of loyalty and the dangers of betrayal. Henry saw firsthand how shifting allegiances could topple a king, as key figures like William Stanley waited until the last moment to decide their support. This experience instilled in him a deep-seated need to secure his position and prevent a similar fate. Henry VII's ascent to the English throne was fraught with uncertainty, teetering on a lineage as thin as a thread. His claim to royal blood came through his mother, Lady Margaret Beaufort, whose descent was like a mere trickle in his veins. Adding to the tenuousness of his claim on the paternal side was a scandalous tale. His grandfather, Owen Tudor, had secretly wed Catherine of Valois, the widow of Henry V half a century earlier, an audacious move hardly fitting for royal ancestry. Henry's insecurities stemmed from his precarious claim to the throne and the constant threats to his reign. These fears were not baseless paranoia, but a realistic appraisal of the volatile political landscape he navigated. Psychologically, this bred in him a vigilant and sometimes mistrustful outlook. He was acutely aware that the loyalty of his subjects and nobles could be as fickle as fortune itself, leading him to establish a network of spies and informers to monitor potential dissent. In governance, Henry's insecurities manifested in his tight control over the nobility and finances. He implemented bonds and recognizances to keep the nobility in check, effectively using financial leverage as a means of ensuring their loyalty. This approach can be seen as a defensive mechanism, guarding against the betrayal and rebellion that had plagued his predecessors. Emotionally, these insecurities might have led Henry to feel isolated, as constant vigilance and mistrust can create a barrier between a leader and his subjects. His rule was characterized by a pragmatic, sometimes cold approach to relationships and alliances, often viewing them through the lens of utility rather than genuine affinity. However, this apparent emotional detachment was likely a coping strategy, helping him to navigate the treacherous waters of Tudor politics. Henry VII's marriage to Elizabeth of York was a masterstroke of political acumen and symbolic genius that not only cemented his claim to the throne, but also healed a nation fractured by civil war. This union was like a beacon of hope, merging the houses of Lancaster and York and giving birth to a new era under the emblem of the Tudor rose, a symbol so potent it became synonymous with the dawning of a new epoch in English history. The creation of the Tudor rose, which combined the white rose of York with the red rose of Lancaster, was a stroke of symbolic brilliance. It served as a visual representation of the new dynasty's foundation. Further battles. The Lincoln Rebellion, also known as the Lambert-Simnel Rebellion, was a significant early challenge to Henry VII's rule, highlighting the fragility of his newly established reign. In 1487, just 2 years after Henry's victory at Bosworth Field, this rebellion tested his resolve and the loyalty of his subjects. Henry VII, upon learning of the uprising, acted swiftly and decisively. He used both diplomacy and force to quell the unrest. Demonstrating his political acumen, Henry publicly paraded the real Earl of Warwick through the streets of London to debunk the impostor's claims, undermining the rebels' narrative. The rebellion culminated in the Battle of Stoke Field in June 1487, often considered the last battle of the Wars of the Roses. It was a fierce and bloody confrontation, but ultimately ended in a decisive victory for Henry. The defeat of the Lincoln Rebellion solidified Henry's claim to the throne. Henry VII's creation of the sovereign gold coin in 1489 was a masterstroke of control and propaganda. This hefty gold currency, emblazoned with his image as a regal, enthroned monarch, was not just money, it was a symbol of unassailable power and Tudor stability. With the royal coat of arms and the Tudor rose adorning its reverse, the sovereign coin broadcasted the legitimacy and consolidated strength of Henry's rule. Beyond its domestic impact, these coins were diplomatic tools, flaunting England's prosperity and enhancing its international stature. Through this strategic currency reform, Henry VII deftly wielded economic power, fortifying his control and imprinting the Tudor authority on the nation's very coinage. Henry began to feel that he would never be able to convince everyone that he was the rightful king. He would need to become even more vigilant, starting with how he ran his household. The establishment of the Privy Chamber marked a significant shift in the royal household structure and mirrored his growing isolation and paranoia. The Privy Chamber was an intimate part of the royal residence, accessible only to the king's most trusted advisors and servants. This move was a strategic effort to create a more controlled and secure environment, reflecting Henry's deepening distrust and desire for privacy. The formation of the Privy Chamber allowed Henry to distance himself from the broader court and its potential for intrigue and conspiracy. It was a space where he could conduct affairs of state away from prying eyes and ears, surrounded by a select group of individuals who had proven their loyalty. This inner sanctum became the heart of Tudor power, where the king made crucial decisions and managed the realm's affairs. Henry's isolation in the Privy Chamber was indicative of his paranoia, fueled by the threats and rebellions he faced throughout his reign. His early experiences of exile and the constant challenges to his claim to the throne instilled in him a persistent fear of usurpation. The memories of the Wars of the Roses, the Lambert Simnel and Perkin Warbeck rebellions, and the ever-present threat of noble dissent made him wary of potential betrayal. The Privy Chamber, therefore, was not just a physical space, but a manifestation of Henry's psychological state, representing his need for control and security in a tumultuous political landscape. It allowed him to maintain a tight grip on power, manage his insecurities, and protect himself from the real and perceived threats that haunted his reign. Through this intimate and fortified chamber, Henry VII navigated the complexities of his monarchy, ever vigilant in safeguarding his dynasty against the shadows of treachery and turmoil. Over the years, Henry VII cultivated a persona that was both grandiose and paranoid, tinged with insecurity. Henry VII engineered his kingdom to ensure that if his adversaries didn't respect him, they would still fear him. His reign was marked by shrewd financial manoeuvring and an intricate web of espionage that kept potential rebels in check and fortified his hold on power. His financial leverage over the nobility and his extensive spying activities were central to maintaining his precarious grip on the English throne. Financially, Henry was a master of control, using economic means to keep the nobility under his thumb. He imposed heavy bonds and recognizances on the aristocracy, essentially financial hostages that could be forfeited to the crown if they stepped out of line. This system of financial surety acted as a powerful deterrent against rebellion, as the nobles stood to lose their fortunes if they contemplated betraying the king. Through these measures, Henry effectively tamed the traditionally powerful and often unruly English nobility, ensuring their loyalty, or at least their compliance, through the threat of ruinous financial penalties. Parallel to his financial strategies, Henry VII's reign was characterized by a sophisticated network of spies and informers that permeated every level of society. His espionage system was designed to detect and quash any hint of insurrection, with spies frequently reporting back to the king on the mood and loyalties of the people. This network was not just about gathering information, it was about projecting power and instilling a sense of omnipresence, making it known that the king's eyes and ears were everywhere. Henry's spies operated in shadows and taverns, courts and countryside, listening for rumours of discontent or plots against the crown. This intelligence network was crucial in preempting rebellions and ensuring that potential threats were neutralised before they could gain momentum. It was a clear message to his subjects. Disloyalty would be discovered and dealt with swiftly. Through these combined strategies of financial leverage and espionage, Henry VII crafted a regime that was both feared and respected. His financial controls ensured that rebellion was a risk few could afford, while his spies made sure that any discontent was known to the crown at the earliest whisper. This dual approach allowed Henry to navigate the dangerous waters of late medieval politics with a steady hand, securing his dynasty's future and leaving a legacy of centralised power that would be built upon by his Tudor successors. Henry VII's mental anguish following the deaths of his wife and heir manifested physically, reflecting the deep toll these losses took on his health and well-being. The king, who had once been vigorous and engaged in the affairs of state, began to show signs of severe stress and deteriorating health. After these personal tragedies, Henry became increasingly reclusive and showed little interest in the daily governance of his kingdom. His physical appearance changed. He lost weight, his complexion became pallid and his energy levels diminished. Chroniclers of the time noted that he suffered from insomnia and experienced a significant decline in his overall vitality. The king's mental state also likely exacerbated existing health issues. He reportedly developed a serious case of tuberculosis, which was aggravated by his periods of intense grief and stress. His physical decline was so marked that contemporaries and later historians often attributed his deteriorating health directly to the emotional impact of his wife's and son's deaths. Moreover, Henry's psychological suffering manifested in his increased paranoia and suspicion, leading to more rigorous control measures within his court and government. This state of constant vigilance and mistrust further drained him, as he became consumed by the fear of losing his grip on power. The psychology of Henry VII is a fascinating study of how personal insecurities can drive a person to leave a lasting legacy. His actions, driven by his psychological profile, not only shaped his reign, but also the future of an entire nation. The year 1509 marked the end of an era in English history with the death of Henry VII on April 21st. The king's death occurred in Richmond Palace, and it brought both an end to his personal struggles and the beginning of a new chapter for England. His son, Henry VIII, succeeded him, and the transition of power was smooth, largely due to the structures and precedents Henry VII had established. His efforts to secure the Tudor succession and stabilise the kingdom paved the way for the relatively untroubled accession of his charismatic and vigorous son, Henry VIII. At first, the people adored young King Henry VIII, but soon the tides of his reign darkened. Shadows of his father's traits lurked within him, and later a grave head injury deepened his ruthlessness and paranoia. The layers of a king's mind are as complex as the crown he wears. Let's delve into the psyche of Henry VII. Like a carefully woven tapestry, the mind of Henry VII was a blend of diverse threads, each contributing to his distinct personality and leadership style. His life experiences, the trials and tribulations he faced, all played a crucial role in shaping his psyche. Henry VII was a complex individual, a blend of strength and vulnerability, confidence and paranoia, shrewdness and pragmatism. His psychological profile provides a fascinating insight into the mind of one of England's most influential kings. Henry VII, a man of his time, yet a timeless study in human psychology.